Vivienne's biggest rival is back. But this time, Vivienne doesn't flinch. And when Liliana tries to reclaim her place, Vivienne's response will go viral. Let's start part 2 of Rebirth, the Fat Luna. Liliana walked toward them with practiced ease, her smile flawless, every step timed like a performance. When she stopped in front of Alexander, she tilted her chin and said sweetly, "Alexander!" It's been a while. His face was unreadable. Voice flat. "Liliana, when did you get back?" She lifted a shoulder. "Just recently. Heard about tonight's gathering, thought I'd drop by." "Not a problem, is it?" Alexander didn't answer. Instead, he turned his head toward Vivienne. Vivienne met his glance without blinking. No fear. No panic. Just steel. She was no longer the woman who used to shrink in Liliana's presence. Liliana followed his gaze and finally saw her. She smiled. "Vivienne, you look different." Vivienne's tone was cool. "People grow, Liliana." The energy in the room shifted. Quiet. Watching. Liliana kept her friendly smile, but her words had a little blade tucked inside. "You really have changed. You used to be so quiet. Barely noticeable. But now? Seems like you finally figured out how to get attention." Translation? You're just putting on a show for the alpha. The old Vivienne might have wilted under that kind of shade. But this Vivienne? She smiled, slow and cold. "Is that so? Funny. Some people disappear for ages and still come back desperate to get what they lost." Liliana's smile faltered. "You've gotten bolder," she said tightly. Vivienne swirled her wine with a shrug. "I've just learned how to handle a certain kind of conversation." Everyone heard it. Power shift. Vivienne wasn't the victim anymore. Liliana's jaw tightened. She had walked in here expecting to shatter Vivienne's confidence, to send her back to the sidelines with nothing but shame and insecurity. But something was wrong. Vivienne didn't even seem fazed. She wasn't playing defense anymore. And then Alexander, silent until now, finally spoke. "Liliana, why are you here?" Her expression twitched. He didn't take a step toward her. Didn't move an inch away from Vivienne. He was standing at his Luna's side. And he wasn't going anywhere. Liliana's nails dug lightly into her palm, but her smile stayed polished. "I'm just here to visit," she said smoothly. "After all, this is my home." She lingered on the word home, eyes flicking toward Vivienne with pointed intent. Vivienne met her gaze head-on, voice steady and cool. "Sorry, Liliana. But in Silverlake Pack, if you're not the Luna, you don't get to stand beside the Alpha." Liliana's expression flickered. 'Cause she knew those words. She had once thrown them at Vivienne years ago, back when she was Alexander's girlfriend. She'd said it with that same arrogant tilt of the chin. If you're not the Luna, you don't belong next to the Alpha. And now? Vivienne had just handed it back, without blinking. Liliana's eyes went colder. She turned to Alexander, her voice dipping just enough to sound fragile. "Alexander, you really don't miss anything about us?" His expression didn't change. "The past is over." That hit. Hard. Liliana's composure cracked. She turned away, heels clicking sharply on the marble floor as she walked out of the hall. But this wasn't the end. Next, Liliana's trap. Moonlight filtered through the trees at the edge of the forest, casting long shadows across the training ground. The air was crisp, laced with the earthy scent of dirt and pine. Vivienne stood at the center of the arena, sweat on her brow, hands clenched, heart pounding. Her opponent today? Jack, a seasoned Gamma. Big, brutal, and known for not holding back. This was no ordinary match. This was Liliana's doing. Ever since Liliana's return, she hadn't made a single public move, but the undercurrents in the pack were shifting. Old loyalties. Quiet whispers. Testing Vivienne inch by inch. They were waiting. For her to fall. For her to fail. And tonight? Liliana was watching from the edge of the crowd, a faint smile playing on her lips, eyes ice cold. She wanted Vivienne humiliated. Broken. Off that Luna pedestal. Across the ring, Jack rolled his shoulders, smirking. "No offense, Luna. But maybe you should sit this one out." I'd hate to hurt you. Vivienne didn't reply. She just lifted her hands. Ready. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, but she didn't flinch. Begin, the trainer barked. Jack moved first, fast. Too fast. He came in hard, fist swinging toward her ribs. Vivienne dodged barely, the wind of his punch scraping her side. Her breath caught, but she didn't go down. She knew better than to fight power with power. Her only chance was speed. Strategy. She shifted her footing, trying to stay light, waiting for an opening. But Jack wasn't giving her one. He chased her down, punch after punch, relentless. She slipped away, barely keeping up, but her stamina was draining fast. Then, wham! A sudden knee slammed into her stomach. Vivienne gasped, the air ripped from her lungs and her body hit the ground hard. Around the arena, wolves winced. She's done. Told you she's not cut out for this. Was only a matter of time. Flat on her stomach, Vivienne sucked in air, pain radiating through her gut. Her fingers clawed into the dirt. Her nails broke through the mud. She gritted her teeth and pushed herself back up. Jack blinked. He hadn't expected that. Vivienne wiped blood from the corner of her mouth, eyes locked on him. It's not over. Not until she won. Not until Liliana knew she couldn't break her. But just as Vivienne tried to catch her breath and ready herself to fight again, a surge of powerful alpha energy exploded across the training field. Everyone froze. All members instinctively paused mid-motion, heads turning toward the entrance. Alexander had arrived. His eyes immediately locked onto Vivienne, and when he saw the blood at the corner of her lips, something in him snapped. His fists clenched. The full force of his alpha aura burst out like a storm, crashing down over the entire field. The air turned sharp, suffocating. Who authorized this training? His voice was low, dangerously calm, but laced with lethal intent. No one answered. Even Jack stiffened, clearly rattled. Vivienne wiped her mouth. I'm fine. I can keep going. Alexander's expression darkened even more. He walked straight toward her, stepping between her and Jack, planting himself like a wall. His eyes swept the crowd like ice. Training is over. Vivienne frowned, about to argue, but Alexander reached out and gripped her wrist, pulling her firmly behind him. She froze. She could feel the heat of his palm, the way he shielded her so instinctively. Alexander was protecting her? She tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. He looked down at her, voice quiet but commanding. You're hurt. Come with me. She opened her mouth to protest, but when she saw that rare flash of raw anger in his eyes, she didn't push it. She let him lead her away. In the pack's medical room, Vivienne sat on the edge of the bed while the healer checked her bruises. Alexander stood nearby, arms crossed, jaw tight. His silence was heavier than the room itself. It's not serious, the doctor finally said. But she needs rest. He packed up his kit and left, leaving them alone. Vivienne looked over at Alexander. His expression hadn't softened. He looked like a volcano barely holding itself together. Through a long pause, he finally spoke. Why didn't you turn it down? She didn't hesitate. If I can't handle a challenge from my own pack, I don't deserve to be Luna. Alexander flinched, just slightly. You don't need to prove anything, he muttered. At least not like this. Her voice was gentle but firm. No, Alexander. I'm not just your mate. I want to be their Luna. For real. He had thought her evolution was all on the surface. But now he realized she wasn't trying to impress him. She was claiming her place. At his side, not behind him. And that realization shook something deep inside him. A few days later, the scent of herbs lingered faintly in the air. The window was half open, letting in a cool breeze that played with the curtains. Vivienne sat at her desk, flipping through old textbooks from the Werewolf University, reorganizing notes on pack administration. Since that fight, more members had started reporting to her directly. Slowly but surely, she was being seen as a real Luna. But her concentration kept breaking. 'Cause Alexander was acting strange. He showed up where she worked. Questions that didn't matter. He hovered but didn't say why. He wasn't distant anymore. But he wasn't exactly warm either. It was like he didn't want to admit he was watching her, but couldn't stop himself. Like today. She'd gone to the training grounds, he was already there. She'd sat to eat, he casually sat across from her. The pack meetings. He kept asking her opinion like it was the most natural thing in the world. Vivienne noticed. Course she noticed. But she didn't call it out. She just kept doing her thing. Meanwhile, Alexander sat on the leather couch in his office, rubbing his temples. His breathing was heavier than usual. His skin felt hot. Too hot. Like something inside him was boiling over. And he knew what it meant. His alpha heat was coming. Every few months, alphas went through this. Heightened instincts, overwhelming urges, a deep pull toward their mate. Brought out all their possessiveness, their primal hunger, their need to mark, to claim, to own. It had never bothered him before. But this time, it was different. 'Cause every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. Vivienne. In that red dress. Skin glowing. Curves tight and full. Her scent in the air, sweet and wild. Everything about her screamed mine, and it was driving his wolf insane. Alexander got to his feet with a growl and walked to the window. Cold air hit his face like a slap. It helped. A little. Damn it. This wasn't supposed to happen. The next morning, as Alexander stepped out of his office and into the pack's training grounds, warriors all around nodded in respect, but more than a few wore knowing, amused expressions. Lars was leaning lazily against a post, and when he spotted Alexander, a smirk curled on his lips. "Alpha, you've been looking a little tense lately," he said, voice dripping with meaning. Alexander shot him a cold glare and didn't answer, striding straight toward the training area. But Lars wasn't done. He let out a low chuckle and added, "Don't tell me your alpha heat's kicking in?" A ripple of awareness spread across the warriors nearby. Several exchanged glances, a few smirking. Alexander's steps faltered just slightly. His scowl deepened. His alpha scent was sharper today, strong enough to burn the air. "Shut up," he snapped. Lars laughed, clearly enjoying himself. "Ah, so I was right." Then, eyes gleaming, he added, "Does your Luna know?" Alexander followed his gaze, and saw Vivienne standing near the administrative hall, talking with a group of warriors, completely unaware of his eyes on her. And damn it, he wanted her. That realization hit him like a blow. Hard. Unsettling. As the evening fell, the symptoms worsened. Alexander's hands trembled slightly, his fists clenched tight. The air around him reeked of alpha pheromones. His skin was burning, his heartbeat erratic, muscles tensed with wild energy. He was at the peak of his heat. He'd never felt this way about Vivienne before. But now? Now he craved her. His mind said no, but his body, his wolf, screamed yes. And the worst part? His wolf wasn't just craving her. It was demanding he claim her. Now. But Vivienne had no idea what was happening to him. Alexander drew in a sharp breath, forcing himself to stay in control. But then he heard laughter. A group of warriors sat gathered, talking and joking freely. Carlos, a younger guy, sipped from his beer bottle, his eyes lingering far too long on Vivienne. "Honestly," Carlos said with a grin, "I never thought our Luna would turn out to be so tempting." Another warrior chuckled. "Right? Alpha's been acting wound up as hell. You think if she wasn't taken, she'd go for someone like—" "Maybe me," Carlos interrupted, smirking. "If it weren't for the pack rules, I might just give it a shot. You're welcome to try." A voice cut through the night. Low. Lethal. "Alexander." He stepped out of the shadows, blue eyes glowing like twin shards of ice. The air changed. His alpha aura exploded outward like a tidal wave, slamming into everyone present. The laughter died instantly. Carlos went pale. He hadn't even realized Alexander was that close. His head dropped instinctively, baring his neck. But Alexander wasn't done. He walked forward, slow and deliberate, his gaze locked on Carlos like a predator eyeing prey. "What was that you said?" Alexander growled, voice cold steel. "You want to try what?" Carlos swallowed hard. "Alpha, I was just joking." "Is that so?" In one smooth motion, Alexander grabbed him by the throat, lifting him effortlessly and slamming him back against a wooden post. Gasps rippled through the warriors. Alexander's alpha power surged, crackling like lightning. Carlos's face turned red. He clawed at Alexander's wrist, struggling to breathe. "I'm going to say this once," Alexander snarled. "Vivienne is not you can touch." His grip tightened. Carlos's veins bulged. His panic was unmistakable. Not a soul dared to intervene. This was no longer just heat. This was an alpha in full-blown possessive fury. "Please," Carlos croaked out, voice barely a rasp. Alexander held him a moment longer, then let go, sending him crashing to the dirt. "Get out of my sight," he ordered coldly. Carlos scrambled away, face pale, breath ragged. No one else moved. Training ground was dead silent. Vivienne had just finished a logistics meeting when she heard the commotion. She hurried toward the noise, only to find Carlos staggering away, the warriors silent, and Alexander standing in the middle of it all, radiating pure fury. She blinked in surprise. "What happened?" No one answered. Eventually, Lars let out a low chuckle. "Nothing. Alpha just reminded everyone where the line is." Vivienne's eyes flicked toward Alexander. He was staring at her, intensely. His gaze was dark, unreadable. His breathing was heavy. His body radiated heat. Even without experiencing alpha heat before, Vivienne felt it in her gut. Something was seriously off. She took a step closer, brows knitting. "Alexander," she asked softly, "are you okay?" Alexander's gaze locked onto her, and the moment her voice reached him, his heart slammed against his chest. The craving surged through his body. He was on the verge of losing control. His voice dropped, low and hoarse. "Vivienne, come with me." Vivienne frowned. "Where are we going?" Alexander didn't answer. He just reached out, gripped her wrist, and led her away, toward the house. The night was cool, moonlight casting a cold blue over the forest, but inside the alpha's bedroom, the heat was stifling. His pheromones filled the air, heavy and overwhelming. His rut had fully hit, and the intensity of it wrapped around the room like a storm. Vivienne could barely stand straight, her knees weak under the pressure. Leaning against the door, her fingers dug into the handle as she tried to regulate her breathing. Behind her, the alpha had already lost to instinct. Alexander stood shirtless, muscles tense, skin slick with heat. His eyes were glowing crimson blue, blazing with untamed desire. "Vivienne." His voice was low and rough, drenched in hunger. He took a step toward her. Then another. Steady. Predatory. Vivienne swallowed, trying to stay rational. "Alexander." "Breathe. You need to calm down." "Calm." A dark laugh left his lips. In a flash, he had her pinned against the door. Her breath caught. Alpha energy engulfed her like a wildfire, burning through the thin barrier of self-control. She tried to pull away, but his hand was already wrapped around her waist. He leaned in, nose brushing along her neck as he breathed her in. His voice was practically a growl now. "Do you smell yourself?" Her wolf whimpered inside her. She knew it too, her scent had changed. His pheromones were triggering something deep within her. Her rational mind resisted, but her body? It was already betraying her. Alexander's nose trailed across her skin. "You're burning too." Vivienne pushed against his chest, but he didn't budge. "That's because of you," her voice trembled. "So stop running." Alpha's voice was pure temptation as his lips brushed her earlobe, gently grazing it with his teeth. His breath was hot, searing her skin, shattering Vivienne's last thread of self-control. Her body melted in his arms. The next second, Vivienne was swept off her feet by Alexander and tossed onto the plush softness of the bed. Her back sank into the silky sheets, hair spilling across the pillow. Before her eyes could even focus, Alpha's strong figure hovered over her, pinning her down firmly. "Alexander," she began, but his mouth crushed down onto hers, silencing her instantly. His kiss was all-consuming, possessive, leaving no room for resistance. Vivienne was breathless, completely under his control. "Right now," he murmured deeply, "I want you to think only of me." His hands slowly slid beneath her clothing, palms burning hot as they traced the curves of her waist. Vivienne felt her rationality collapsing inch by inch. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, and she instinctively tightened her legs, trying to resist. But Alexander swiftly parted them, firmly pinning her down with his knee. "Keep struggling," Alpha's voice was now dangerously rough, whispered right against her ear, "and I'll make it even harder for you." Vivienne's face was flushed, breath uneven as she glared up at him. "What exactly do you want?" Alexander chuckled softly, dipping his head to kiss along her collarbone. His tongue slowly traced her sensitive skin, gently biting, as if punishing her for even trying to escape. Between each kiss, he whispered, "You tell me." Vivienne's nails dug deep into his shoulders, the Alpha's heat nearly scorching her. Her breathing hitched, body surrendering bit by bit, completely yielding to his rhythm. When he finally entered her, her entire body shuddered violently, consciousness dissolving completely. She could only cling tightly to Alexander's arms, soft, uncontrollable whimpers escaping her lips. Alexander leaned down, gently pressing a kiss to her forehead, voice low and husky. "Good girl," he murmured, "take all of me." Vivienne's gaze lost focus for a second. Her wolf had completely submitted. Her body was under Alpha's control, her rationality shredded into pieces, and all she could do was fall deeper with every movement Alexander made. He kissed her again and again, each time whispering against her lips, "Tell me, who do you belong to?" Vivienne panted, trembling, biting her lips stubbornly without replying. Alexander's eyes narrowed. His movements deepened and his voice turned rough, commanding, "If you don't answer, I'll make it even harder for you." Vivienne couldn't take it anymore. As she reached the brink of surrender, tears welled in her eyes and she choked out a whimper. "Yours? Alexander, I'm yours." Alexander's pupils dilated, his possessiveness fully ignited. With a growl, he dove in, kissing her hard as he claimed her over and over, until she felt like she'd been completely fused into his very being. That night, the bedroom burned with wild heat. Vivienne's gasps mixed with Alexander's growls, the sound of them tangled together, bodies and souls lost in each other. That night, Vivienne fully became his. Alexander's heat lasted an entire week. For the first time, he realized how powerful true union could feel, both physical and emotional. They weren't just bonded by instinct anymore, they were becoming something more. Next, Vivienne's big plan. Sunlight filtered through the forest canopy, casting a golden glow over the pack's training grounds. The scent of grass and earth filled the air. Vivienne stood in the center of the field, facing over a dozen female werewolves. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to doubt. Some even looked a little skeptical. For generations, the women in their pack had played supporting roles, handling administrative duties, managing the home, raising pups. Fighting and patrol? That had always been the men's job. But Vivienne believed that mindset was stifling. She wanted the women to learn how to fight, how to protect themselves, not just survive by relying on others. Belinda, one of the pack's strongest female warriors, stood with arms crossed, frowning slightly. "Luna, we all see how much you've changed lately. But do you really think we need this?" Vivienne smiled calmly. "Belinda, you're one of the best female fighters we have. But do you think we should all depend on a few strong warriors to keep us safe?" Belinda didn't answer right away. Another she-wolf, Alina, spoke up quietly. "But our mates are alpha, they'll protect us." Vivienne's expression hardened, her tone quiet but firm. "And if they're not there? What then? What if it's just you standing between danger and the ones you love?" Question hung heavy in the air. No one had ever asked them that before. Vivienne didn't wait. "We're not here to debate. We're starting now." She stepped into the middle of the field. "If you think this training isn't worth it, prove it. Knock me down." Belinda raised a brow, a smirk tugging at her lips. "You sure about that, Luna?" Vivienne lifted her chin. "Try me." The female werewolves closed in, all of them curious to see what Vivienne was really made of. Belinda was the first to step forward, assuming her stance. Tension on the training field thickened. More members gathered to watch, including several male warriors now pausing to see what was about to go down. "Begin!" Vivienne barked. Belinda didn't hesitate. She charged in fast, her fist aimed straight for Vivienne's shoulder. But just as the punch was about to land, Vivienne pivoted. She sidestepped the blow with precision, grabbed Belinda's arm and flipped her, hard, slamming her onto the ground. Thud. Belinda stared up at her, shocked. She hadn't expected that. Not from Vivienne. Gasps erupted from the crowd. She actually won? She's gotten strong. Belinda pushed herself up, dusting off her clothes. Then she smirked. Guess you really are qualified to teach us. One by one, women began stepping forward, nodding, signaling their willingness to train. Vivienne smiled, just a little. She had done it. From the shadows beneath the trees, Liliana stood silently, her eyes fixed coldly on Vivienne standing at the center of the training field. She had seen the shift, the way the other females in the pack now looked at Vivienne, how they were starting to truly accept her. She couldn't allow this to continue. She would find a way to make Vivienne disappear for good. That evening, Vivienne was organizing the training data, quietly reviewing the numbers. Suddenly, she heard familiar footsteps behind her. She looked up and found Alexander standing in front of her, holding a cup of warm honey tea, a faint frown between his brows. "Drink this." His voice was calm, but there was something tight behind it, an undercurrent of tension. Vivienne blinked in surprise. Alexander brought her tea? Since the heat, they'd grown more familiar, closer even. But something as thoughtful as this? That wasn't like him. She took the cup slowly and sipped it. The sweet taste of honey melted on her tongue, warm and soothing, with a faint trace of vanilla. She looked up. "Since when do you care about what I drink?" Alexander replied flatly. "You've been skipping meals." Again. Vivienne froze. He noticed her routine? Her heart skipped just slightly, but she quickly gathered herself, setting the cup down. Her tone stayed composed. "Thank you, Alpha." She used the formal title on purpose, wanting to see how he'd react. Alexander's jaw tensed. "Vivienne. My name isn't Alpha." Vivienne studied his face. She didn't know if he was pursuing her, but one thing was clear. He no longer wanted to keep things strictly Alpha and Luna. And it wasn't just her who noticed. In the pack's open market, a few young male warriors were chatting. "Have you noticed? Alpha's been acting different toward Luna lately." "Yeah, I saw him staring at Vivienne at the training grounds the other day." "Do you think Alpha finally realized he likes her?" "If he did, man, that'd be wild." They exchanged knowing looks, half joking, half serious. And that gossip didn't take long to reach Liliana's ears. From the second-floor balcony of the main hall, Liliana listened to the chatter from below, her nails digging sharply into her palms. But what she couldn't stomach the most was that Vivienne wasn't even trying. Vivienne didn't chase Alexander. She didn't flatter him, didn't cling. And yet, he was the one drawing closer. Liliana's breathing grew heavy. Her eyes glinted with icy malice. That night, Vivienne was with the warriors, going over the patrol shifts. Since she had taken on more responsibility within the pack, her leadership had started to gain real weight. Few questioned her anymore. Her expression was calm, eyes focused. Her fingers traced the map in front of her as she assigned tasks with clear precision. From a distance, Alexander stood on the main hall's upper balcony, silently watching her. She had grown so much, even without him. She didn't need to lean on his name anymore. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips. His Luna, no, his woman, was now everything he had once only imagined, strong, capable, independent. But as the smile lingered, his brow creased slightly. Because despite everything, even after that week of intense heat, of raw intimacy and connection, she still hadn't truly acknowledged the shift in his feelings. He wanted her. Completely. Desperately. And she was still keeping her distance. Was she testing him? Or had she truly not seen him? Alexander's eyes narrowed, frustration brewing low in his chest. But just then, the main doors of the pack hall burst open. A figure stumbled in, disheveled and pale. Blood at the corner of her mouth, her dress torn, wolf ears trembling with fear. It was Liliana. The room fell into stunned silence. All eyes locked on her. Her voice came out hoarse and broken. "Alpha, help me." Alexander's brows drew together, but there was no flicker of emotion in his eyes. Vivienne, however, let a slow, cold smile tug at the corner of her lips. So this was Liliana's last card, huh? Liliana stumbled toward Alexander, eyes slightly red, her voice trembling just enough to seem fragile. I was at the border. I ran into some rogues. They tried to hurt me. Her voice cracked like she was barely holding it together. If I hadn't managed to escape, she trailed off, biting her lip, giving him the same wounded, helpless look that had once always worked on him. She was betting he wouldn't be able to resist. The hall went dead silent. Every member there waited for Alexander's response. But his expression didn't change. He just stared at her, calm, almost cold. The Border Patrol reported no rogue activity. Where exactly did you run into them? Liliana stiffened. She hadn't expected that. She thought he'd be worried, not skeptical. Her fingers trembled slightly, voice a little too rushed. Maybe they just got in. Maybe Juan's new patrol route has some gaps. Alexander's gaze sharpened like he could see straight through her. If patrol really failed, he said flatly, then why didn't the warriors report it? You know lies don't work on an alpha, Liliana. Her face paled. Alexander wasn't the same man who once let her manipulate him. And she was quickly running out of options. But she wasn't ready to give up. She took a shaky breath, her voice small, nearly begging. Alexander, do you really not care about me at all anymore? Liliana. Alexander's voice was low and final. I feel nothing for you. You can stay in the pack or you can leave, I won't stop you. But if you try to stir up trouble again... His eyes narrowed, voice cold as steel. I won't tolerate it. A collective gasp echoed through the room. Alexander had never drawn the line so clearly before. Liliana's lips trembled. And when her eyes found Vivienne didn't smirk. She didn't gloat. In fact, she didn't show any emotion at all. She just looked at Liliana, quiet, steady, calm. That kind of calm that felt like a wall you could never climb. Liliana looked away. Her voice was a whisper. I understand. And she walked out. From that night on, Liliana didn't show her face again. And Vivienne? She went right back to work. After a long day of training, Vivienne was cleaning her short blade when she looked up and saw Alexander approaching. The warriors around them scattered instantly, giving them space. She raised a brow as he stopped in front of her. Your training's going well, Alexander said, his gaze drifting to her hands, a flicker of pride and scrutiny in his eyes. Vivienne chuckled softly and slid the blade back into its sheath. Thanks for the feedback, Alpha. Alexander's expression tightened. He hated when she called him that. You've made real progress, he said, stepping closer. But there's one thing you still need to work on. Oh. She tilted her head. Like what? His lips curved slightly. You tend to flinch during close combat. That hesitation can get you hurt in a real fight. Vivienne blinked. So, what, you want to teach me now? He nodded. If you'll let me. She studied him, quiet, thoughtful. She wasn't blind. She saw the way he looked at her. The way his tone softened, the way his presence hovered just a little too long. Alexander was pursuing her. But she wasn't about to make it easy. With a subtle smirk, she said, All right. Let's see what you've got. They stood in the center of the training ground, the afternoon sun slicing through the trees, casting long shadows across the dirt. Alexander slowly lifted his hand, silently inviting her to make the first move. Vivienne didn't hesitate. She lunged at him, aiming a clean strike toward his shoulder, but he sidestepped easily, almost lazily, and let her momentum carry past him. Too slow, he murmured, voice low and edged with amusement. You can do better. Narrowing her eyes, Vivienne adjusted her stance and went in again, this time faster, sharper, more focused. But Alexander blocked her without breaking a sweat. His palm pressed lightly against her wrist, just enough to throw her off balance, and the next thing she knew, she was falling forward, and his arm was already around her waist, pulling her against his chest. Her nose nearly brushed his collarbone. That signature alpha scent, crisp wood, cool wind, and something darker beneath, wrapped around her like a net. Her body tensed instinctively, her heart skipping a beat. Alexander lowered his head, his gaze locking onto hers. His voice came out rough, low, like gravel sliding over silk. You're rushing, Vivienne. She drew in a deep breath, trying to pull her composure back together. This was a test. He wanted to see if she could hold her ground when he got close, too close. "Oh," she said, tone light teasing. "Then maybe I should try again." His smirk deepened. "By all means." His fingers curled around her wrist, his voice dropping into a warning growl. "Just be ready this time." He didn't give her a second more. In a sudden, fluid movement, he grabbed her by the shoulder and slammed her back against the wooden post, this time using his full alpha strength. Vivienne barely had time to process it. 1 second, she was upright. The next, Alexander's body was flush against hers, the heat rolling off him in waves, his breath brushing her ear. The air between them crackled. She widened her eyes, pulse pounding. She could feel everything, his heartbeat, his rising temperature, the tension in his muscles. His presence was overpowering, and he knew it. Her lips tugged upward in a slow, daring smile. "Alexander, are you seriously using training as an excuse to get close to me? It's not your heat now." His pupils dilated, and just for a second, just 1 second, he froze. She'd turned the tables. Then he let out a low, rasping laugh. "Is that what you think?" Vivienne didn't answer. Instead, while he was still reeling from her comeback, she swept a leg out and knocked his feet from under him. In one fluid motion, she slipped from his grasp and stepped back, smoothing the sleeve of her shirt like nothing happened. Her smile didn't fade. "Well then, I guess today's lesson is over." Alexander stared at her, quiet for a beat, then the corner of his mouth lifted again, just a little wider this time. She was baiting him. She was making him wait. And he knew it. He said softly, "But next time." His eyes burned into hers. "You're not walking away so easy." Next. The pack's council hall was dead quiet, save for the soft rustling of maps and the faint clink of documents being passed down the table. Patrol routes, resource allocations, rogue wolf sightings. It was all there, spread across the table like the blueprint of survival. Today, the Iron Claw Pack was sending their delegation for the quarterly border talks. And everyone knew this was going to be a battle of wits. Alexander sat at the head of the table, his fingers rhythmically tapping the oak surface, eyes locked in thought. Tension crackled in the air. This negotiation would decide the future of hunting grounds, border security, and rogue management. If it went sideways, it wouldn't just be bad news, it could spark an all-out pack conflict. Just as the doors were about to close, they swung open again. Vivienne stepped in, calm and collected, her posture straight and voice firm. "I want to be part of this meeting." Heads turned. A few eyebrows raised. Lars arched a brow. "Luna, this kind of diplomacy has always been alpha territory. You sure you want in?" Vivienne didn't flinch. "As Luna, I have the right to be informed and to contribute. This is my pack too." Alexander leaned back slightly, his expression unreadable, eyes fixed on her like he was weighing every word, every move. But Vivienne could feel it. He was watching her closely. And she wasn't backing down. "Vivienne, do you even have experience with diplomacy?" one of the senior pack members asked cautiously, doubt flickering in his gaze. She smiled, calm and poised. "If experience alone won battles, Iron Claw would have swallowed us whole 30 years ago. That shut them up." She stepped up to the head of the table, fingers tapping lightly on the map laid out in front of her. Her voice, smooth and steady, filled the room. "Alpha Raymond from Iron Claw has been pushing our limits for months. Every time we meet, they get more hunting grounds and we get more patrol duty." Her eyes swept across the table, cool and sharp. "If we keep negotiating like we always have, we'll always be on the defensive. And I'm done playing defense." Lars gave a low whistle. "Okay then. What's your play?" Vivienne's smile deepened, cool and collected. "You negotiate with strength or with smarts. If Iron Claw won't give up land, then they're going to pay for keeping it." She tapped the map again. "We push back. We ask them to take on more patrol coverage or cough up additional resources. If they refuse, they'll know we're not here to play nice." Lars arched a brow. "And if they walk away from the table?" Her voice turned silky. "They won't, because I have something they need." Later, at the negotiation table, the double doors swung open as Iron Claw's delegation strode into the hall. Alpha Raymond led the pack, tall, broad-shouldered, with calculating brown eyes and the smug energy of someone used to getting his way. He took one look at Vivienne and gave a short, dry laugh. The Luna's leading the negotiation today? That's new. Vivienne smiled without flinching. I assume you don't mind talking to the person who can make decision. Raymond blinked, clearly not expecting her to fire back. As soon as the talks began, Raymond did exactly what Vivienne had predicted, trying to pile more patrol responsibilities on Silverlake while keeping the better hunting zones for himself. Tension rose quickly. Then Vivienne leaned back in her chair, smiling sweetly. Tell me something, Alpha Raymond. It's not exactly a secret that your female warriors lack combat readiness, is it? His brow twitched. And what does that have to do with border patrol? Vivienne drummed her fingers on the table. If your women trained with us, learned real combat skills, your whole pack would get stronger. That means fewer wolves needed for patrol. And that alpha is called efficiency. Raymond paused. She wasn't just pushing back. She was offering him a solution. A real one. A win for both sides. By the end of the meeting, he'd backed off the land demand and agreed to take on more patrol responsibilities in exchange for sending his female members to be trained in Silverlake. It was bold, strategic, and a complete power move. After the meeting, even the most skeptical pack warriors were buzzing. Across the room, Alexander watched her, his heart pounding. This was the moment he realized he was completely, hopelessly gone for this woman. His Luna, not just by title, but in every way that mattered. He closed his eyes and breathed her in from across the hall. No more waiting. It was time she knew about his feelings. That night, the forest was quiet as the patrol moved through the trees. Vivienne walked in step with Alexander, silent but alert. The moonlight filtered through the canopy, casting silvery shadows across the moss-covered ground. A scout suddenly broke the stillness. Message from Iron Claw, he whispered. Rogues spotted in the eastern ravine. They've requested backup. Vivienne and Alexander exchanged a glance. Alexander frowned, his voice low. We'll check it out. They split the patrol, half heading back to report. The rest, led by Alexander and Vivienne, moved toward the ravine. But when they arrived, something fell off. The rogues weren't hostile. Not even close. Huddled in the shadows of the ravine were injured female wolves and a handful of pups, terrified, exhausted, clearly on the run from something far worse than border patrol. Vivienne's gaze sharpened as she stepped forward, her voice soft but resolute. We can't leave them. Alexander didn't argue. His eyes swept over the scene, bloody paws, trembling shoulders, one pup whimpering in its sleep. He gave a tight nod. We find shelter for the night. At first light, we bring them in. Later, beside the low crackling fire at the edge of the valley, Vivienne sipped a cup of warm herbal tea, her brows furrowed in thought. Not far away, cloaked in the flicker of flame and shadow, Alexander watched her. Silent. Intense. She sipped again. Let out a quiet sigh. You've been staring at me for 10 minutes, she finally said, voice calm. Say what you came to say. Alexander moved closer, slowly stepping into the firelight. His eyes were dark, unreadable, but there was something simmering beneath. Something close to breaking. Vivienne, he said, his voice rough around the edges. How long are you going to make me wait? Her eyes flicked up, cool as ever. Until you admit you want me for me. Not just because I'm your Luna. Alexander flinched. She knew. Knew that what he felt had grown past duty, past instinct. Knew he was burning for her, not just in body but soul. I already admitted it, he rasped. You just haven't given me your answer. She stood, slow and steady, eyes locked on his. Firelight danced across his face, highlighting the tension in his jaw, the restraint coiled in every inch of his body. Are you afraid? She asked softly. His pupils narrowed. Breath caught. You're scared that if you lose control, she tilted her head, lips curling just slightly, you'll never get it back. Her words landed like claws across his chest. He couldn't deny it. You call yourself Alpha, she murmured, stepping closer. But right now, you look like a man completely under my spell. Alexander's chest rose and fell with ragged breath. His control teetered. His hand lifted, brushing her chin, barely there, but it burned like wildfire. His voice was hoarse, dangerous. Careful, Vivienne. You're playing with fire. She leaned in, stood on her toes, lips brushing his ear. And what if I want to get burned? That was it. He snapped. In the next heartbeat, she was pinned against a tree, his body flush with hers, his scent flooding her senses like a tidal wave. His eyes glowed, burning blue with alpha fury and something deeper, pure, unfiltered desire. His lips ghosted over her neck. His fangs grazed her skin, dangerously close to marking her, claiming her forever. But just before he sank them in, he stopped. Chest heaving. Hands trembling. He forced himself back. Not tonight, he growled, voice breaking. You're getting a proper ceremony. The biggest damn marking ceremony this pack's ever seen. Next. The marking ceremony. Morning broke over Silverlake in a wash of gold. The scent of dew hung in the air, and in the central square, pack members were already hard at work. Tonight was the ceremony. Banners went up. Torches lined the perimeter. The fire pit was cleaned, the platform set. It would be the biggest ritual since Alexander's coronation as Alpha. On the second-floor balcony, Vivienne stood in silence, overlooking the flurry of preparation. And despite everything they'd been through, her chest tightened with something she hadn't expected. Nerves. Vivienne. She turned. Alexander stood behind her. He looked devastating. Clad in full ceremonial black, the fabric hugged every inch of his broad frame, silver embroidery curling over his chest and shoulders, symbols of his rank, his bloodline. Alexander stepped closer, no hesitation in his eyes now, just certainty. That same commanding presence, but tonight it was wrapped in something deeper. Tonight is the marking ceremony, he said, his voice rough with meaning. After this, we'll belong to each other. For real. Vivienne's fingers tightened slightly. She knew exactly what a mark meant. This wasn't just a bite. It wasn't just a tradition. It was a bond, soul-deep, irreversible. Once he marked her, they would be connected in a way no one else could ever touch. Thoughts, emotions, instincts, all entwined. She took a slow breath and lifted her gaze to meet his without flinching. Alexander reached for her hand, his grip gentle but sure. Vivienne, he said, his voice low and steady, I didn't choose you because I'm an alpha. He leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers. His breath fanned across her skin, warm and intimate. I chose you because I'm me. Her heartbeat stuttered. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking in the heat of his touch, the gravity of his words. Will you be mine? He whispered, voice nearly breaking. His wolf clawed at his chest, begging for her answer. Vivienne slowly opened her eyes, and the uncertainty that had once lingered there was gone. She nodded once, her voice barely above a breath. I will. Alexander's heart slammed against his ribs. His lips twitched into the smallest, most genuine smile she'd ever seen from him. His Luna had said yes. Nightfall settled over the Silverlake Pack like a velvet curtain, and the ceremonial grounds glowed with firelight. Torches lined the edges, casting flickers across the stone platform. In the center, a massive bonfire roared to life. Pack stood in a circle, every eye focused on the pair at the center. Alexander faced Vivienne, his gaze a storm of pride, possession, and something deeper, devotion. The elder's voice echoed across the square. Tonight, Alpha Alexander claims his Luna, Vivienne, in the sacred rite of marking. Cheers erupted from the crowd, loud enough to shake the forest. Alexander stepped closer, voice husky, raw. Are you ready? Vivienne inhaled deeply, then gave a slow, steady nod. And then he leaned in. His lips brushed her neck, right where the mark would go. She could feel his fangs extending, grazing her skin with barely their pressure. His breath was fire. His touch, possessive, reverent. And then, he bit. His canines sank into her flesh, and everything changed. A pulse of raw power surged through her, white-hot and primal. Her whole body shuddered. Her mind opened, and Alexander's flooded in. His heartbeat. His thoughts. His feelings. He was overwhelmed, euphoric, and so desperately hers. Alexander's arms locked around her, holding her tight as the bond sealed between them. His wolf howled in triumph. His soul roared with completion. She was his. Forever. Later, back in the quiet of their room, the fire still burning low in the hearth. "Now," Alexander murmured, his voice rough with alpha satisfaction, "you're mine." For good. Vivienne let out a soft laugh, eyes twinkling with challenge. "Oh, really? If you ever piss me off, I promise I'll make you regret it." Alexander chuckled low in his throat, dropping a feather-like kiss on her forehead, his gaze dripping with adoration and possession. "You can ruin me all you want, Vivienne," he said, voice husky against her skin. "But you're never getting away from me." Morning light filtered softly through the curtains, casting golden stripes across the bed. A breeze fluttered the fabric, carrying the faint scent of pine and fresh dew. Vivienne stirred, blinking her eyes open slowly. She was wrapped in warmth, Alexander's warmth. His arms locked tight around her, his scent saturating the entire room. She shifted just slightly, and his grip instantly tightened, pulling her flush against his chest. "Don't move," he murmured, voice all gravel and heat. She smiled lazily, tilting her head back to look at him. Still dreaming. One eye cracked open, and his gaze landed on her, heavy-lidded and filled with that same intoxicating intensity. "No dream," he said. "You're really mine now." Vivienne rolled over, fingers trailing down his shoulder, a playful smirk curling on her lips. "Well then, shouldn't you let me go? We've got a full day ahead, my dear Alpha." His expression darkened slightly, his wolf clearly protesting, but he knew better. Vivienne was never going to be the type to stay in bed just because he asked nicely. He dipped his head, pressed a lingering kiss to her neck, and finally, reluctantly, loosened his hold. "Go on, Luna." Vivienne slipped from the sheets with a soft grin. But while Vivienne was rising, earning every inch of ground beneath her feet, Liliana was already planning her fall. A few of the pack's oldest wolves sat around a dying fire, faces worn and uneasy. "Vivienne is not the real Luna," Liliana said softly, every word like venom. "She got lucky. She's riding on Alexander's affection." "That's it." One of the elders frowned. "She's stronger than we expected. She's earned the pack's support." Liliana's smile turned sharp. "Do you really think a woman from outside our bloodline can understand what it means to lead us? Are you willing to let her rewrite our traditions? Change everything we built?" The older wolves exchanged wary glances, uncertain. But Liliana saw the doubt, and she pounced. "I just need your help," she said smoothly. "If we don't act now, Silverlake will be hers completely. We can't let that happen." The next morning, the pack was rocked by a single horrifying discovery. A respected elder was found dead in the council hall. Claw marks marred his throat, deep, deliberate, brutal. But that wasn't the worst part. In his hand was a set of documents. Resource allocations signed with Vivienne's name. And just like that, the rumors erupted like wildfire. Why was Luna's name on his files? Is she eliminating her opposition? She is already the Luna. What more does she want? Vivienne stood over the body, eyes narrowed, expression unreadable. Her enemy had finally drawn blood. When Alexander arrived and saw what was happening, fury poured off him in waves. He stepped into the council hall like a thunderstorm, voice cold as ice. "Who dares accuse her?" His voice echoed like a growl, his alpha aura slamming into every corner of the room. Wolves bowed their heads, trembling beneath the weight of his rage. His wolf was snarling, ready to tear the room apart. But Vivienne was calm, calmer than he'd ever seen her. She laid a hand on his arm. "Alexander, breathe." He did. Barely. And then she turned to the room, her voice even and lethal. "You will not slander me." From the back of the crowd, Liliana watched with barely concealed delight. But Vivienne wasn't finished, not even close. That night, behind closed doors, she met with Alexander and a handful of their most loyal wolves. "We're not going to find the truth," she said. The room fell silent. Lars furrowed his brow. "Then what are we going to do?" A slow, dangerous smile curved on Vivienne's lips. "We're going to make the truth." Confusion flickered across their faces. She leaned forward, voice razor sharp. "Starting tonight, we spread the word. The victim isn't dead." "What?" someone breathed. Vivienne's eyes glittered. "We say he's alive, barely. Injured, but recovering in the pack's medical wing." Under watch. Unconscious. Alexander's eyes flashed with a spark of admiration. He already understood Vivienne's plan. If the killer thinks he's still alive, he said slowly, then they'll definitely try again to finish the job for good. The next day, rumors rippled through the pack. The elder, once believed dead, had been saved in the nick of time. Though unconscious, he could apparently wake at any moment. Wolves all over the territory buzzed with shock. Meanwhile, hidden in the shadows, Liliana's expression hardened. She'd been so sure her plan was flawless, yet here she stood, facing the possibility that her victim was still breathing. If he woke, he'd expose her. Immediately. She couldn't let that happen. At midnight, Liliana slipped into the medical room, lurking close to the walls. She held a sleek silver dagger, every breath shallow, nerves tight. Her heartbeat raced. Her palms damp with sweat. Step by careful step, she approached the victim. Her blade hovered, ready to plunge down. Bang! Lights blazed on in an instant. Seize her! Warriors poured into the room, forcing Liliana to the floor. She fought back, eyes wild, heart slamming in her chest. She realized she'd walked straight into a trap. And then, behind her, the unconscious figure on the bed sat up and calmly removed his bandages. Beneath them was an entirely different face, not the dead elder at all, just one of Vivienne's loyal men in disguise. Liliana felt her blood run cold. She stiffened. It was over. In a voice of iron authority, Alexander proclaimed, Liliana is permanently exiled from Silverlake Pack. Her wolf status revoked. From this moment on, she's a rogue forbidden to return. Collective inhale. Shock rippled through the crowd. Exile. Worse than death. Without a pack, Liliana would become fair game to any predator, her wolf instincts unraveling day by day until she had no one and nowhere to go. Alexander stood beside Vivienne, pride and fierce affection swirling in his gaze. You're even cleverer than I imagined, he murmured, a soft, affectionate smile tugging at his lips. Next, a heated encounter. Early morning sunlight seeped through the curtains. The room still radiated the thick, heady warmth left by last night's delirious chaos. Alpha pheromones clung to every surface, saturating the air. Vivienne stirred, half awake, her limbs weak and sore, her throat raw. Last night's passion had left her entire body feeling like it had been crushed and remade. The moment she tried to move, an arm tightened around her waist. Alexander's body pressed snug against her, heat rolling off him, threatening to pull her under all over again. Don't move, he growled by her ear, voice still husky with lingering desire, as if the madness of the night hadn't yet faded. She tensed, wanting to shove him off, but in a flash, he caught her wrist, firm, unyielding. With a fluid motion, he flipped her beneath him, leaning down to drop a gentle kiss on her collarbone. She hissed a breath in annoyance, snapping a leg up to catch him, but Alexander expected that, giving a low chuckle as he seized her knee with ease. So feisty this morning, huh? Vivienne opened her mouth to retort, but alpha pheromones slammed into her senses like a tidal wave. She froze. Her wolf quivered inside, and damn it, she was nowhere near recovered from last night's assault on her senses. Alexander narrowed his intense blue gaze. He felt the shift in her body. Something dangerous kindled in his eyes. You're still running hot, he rasped, lips curving into a knowing smirk. Vivienne gritted her teeth, refusing to yield. I don't need you fussing over me. Alexander let out a dark laugh. In the next heartbeat, he scooped her up effortlessly, striding toward the bathroom. She yelped. Hey, what are you? Put me down. His teeth sank lightly into the juncture of her neck, tongue flicking over the mark in lazy punishment. Behave, Luna. Time to get cleaned up. But they both knew he wanted much more than a simple shower. Hot water poured from the shower head, steam rising thick around them, painting everything with a hazy glow that made the space feel intoxicatingly intimate. Vivienne found herself pinned against the wall, water sliding across her shoulder and dipping into the hollow of her collarbone before trickling lower. Alexander stood behind her, his burning chest molded to her back, one broad hand roaming her waist in slow, deliberate strokes. Vivienne's breath hitched. She tried to push away, but his force was too overwhelming. The swirl of alpha pheromones teased every nerve, unraveling her will. Alexander, she bit out, voice trembling. Enough. He laughed softly, brushing his lips behind her ear. The wet heat of his breath against her skin made her shiver. Enough? Last night you were the one begging me for more. Color flooded Vivienne's cheeks. She lashed out with a palm, but he caught her wrist easily, leaning in to whisper at her ear, "Patience, Luna!" She barely had time to protest before he sealed his mouth over hers in a searing kiss. Water streamed over them as he devoured her mind spinning, body melting. His scorching alpha presence pinned her in place. At some point she broke free, panting, head tipped back in surrender. "Alexander, I can't." A glimmer of satisfaction flickered in his eyes. He lightly grazed her ear with his teeth, voice thick with indulgent command. "Bear with it just a little longer." Vivienne's inner monologue flared with outrage. Bear with it? She thought the shower would be the limit. But Alexander wasn't done. By midday, sunlight danced over a quiet pool, cool water rippling with gentle currents, the perfect antidote to scorching heat. Vivienne sank against the pool's edge, her muscles screaming for rest. She was exhausted. Alexander had left her too spent to do much more than float. But a slight shift in the water caught her attention. She tensed. Alexander approached with quiet resolve, cerulean eyes alight with dangerous intent. Vivienne instinctively edged back. "What are you up to now?" A mischievous smile tugged at his lips. "What do you think?" He reached out, fingers sifting through her wet hair, trailing over her shoulder, letting droplets bead and roll down the slope of her neck. He dipped his head, brushing his mouth lightly against her damp skin. Vivienne gave a startled shiver. "Alexander!" Too late. In one swift motion, he gripped her waist and pulled, toppling her off balance. She yelped, arms flailing. Her legs wrapped around his hips, entirely on instinct, and his hands steadied her back with infuriating ease. "See? You can be cooperative," he teased. Ripples fanned outward as he pressed her against the pool's edge. His chest pinned her there, mouth drifting down her spine with teasing, punishing kisses. Vivienne's voice caught as she whimpered, "Not here, Alexander, someone might." His deep chuckle resonated against her soaked skin. "No one's here, and even if they were, I'm not letting you go." She bit her lip, half dazed as the water lapped around them, his presence drowning her senses. Piece by piece, she succumbed, arms braced against the edge, letting him take what he wanted. Sunlight shimmered across the surface, refracting into wild patterns of light and shadow. Vivienne could only cling to him, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes as she murmured desperate pleas. Alpha only hushed her with a wicked smile. "Don't run. You know you can't." Eventually, Vivienne understood. His possessiveness was nowhere near finished. 1 year later, the Silverlake territory still thrummed with life. The forest rang with low howls at dusk. But inside the Alpha's home, new sounds joined the pack's nightly chorus, a tiny infant's cry. Their next heir had been born. A baby boy with bright blue eyes and Vivienne's stubborn spirit. Vivienne reclined on a plush bed, cradling the little one against her chest. His skin was soft as silk, his gaze wide and curious, little fists clutching at his mother's shirt like she was the whole world. Alexander sat at her side, one arm draped protectively around them both, eyes filled with contentment he never knew was possible. He stroked the baby's chubby cheek, his voice still quiet, still thick with reverence. "Look at him, he has your looks." Vivienne brushed a tender kiss over her son's forehead. Alexander took their son from Vivienne's arms, gently squeezing his tiny hand. "Come on, little man. Say daddy." The baby blinked his wide, curious eyes, opening and closing his mouth, cooing softly, "Aha!" Vivienne laughed lightly, amused. "Alexander, he's only 3 months old. There's no way he can say daddy yet." Refusing to give up, Alexander leaned in, gently rubbing his nose against the baby's, murmuring softly, "Daddy! Say it for me, buddy." The little boy stared at him, blinked twice, then suddenly broke into a gummy smile. With a sweet, babbling voice, he squeaked out, "Duh!" Silence fell across the room for a heartbeat. The very next second, Alexander hugged his son tighter, his expression filled with a joy Vivienne had never seen before. "Did you hear that?" He said daddy. Vivienne tried to suppress her laughter. He probably just made a random sound. But Alexander was already ecstatic, standing up, holding their son proudly as he paced around the room. "Come on, buddy, say it again." "Daddy, one more time." The baby looked up in confusion, tilted his tiny head, then obediently cooed once more. Duh? Daddy. Alexander almost lost it right then and there. He planted a firm kiss on the baby's soft, chubby cheek, voice thick with emotion. Good boy. Daddy will give you the entire pack to play with if you want. Vivienne watched the two of them fondly, her lips curving into a gentle smile. She had once been a Luna who was overweight, self-destructive, and looked down upon by everyone. But now she had an alpha who loved her to the point of madness, and the beautiful family they'd created together. At long last, she'd found the happiness she'd always dreamed of. And that's the end of the story. Now it's your turn. What kind of werewolf story do you want to hear next? More rejected mates? Secret babies? Alpha twins? Forbidden love between rival packs? Drop your dream plot in the comments. I read them all, and the most liked ideas might just become my next story. And don't forget to hit like if you love this story, subscribe to Spicy Reads, and tap that bell so you'll never miss a single spicy update.